Traumas are deep energetic wounds, and if they are left unresolved and unhealed in a person, within the layers of our bodies are created a pathway for various energy parasites and attachments that form many energetic tributaries that feed the same wound of internal trauma. In higher vision, it can appear something like a black energy octopus in the person's energy field. It can be sensed as formed from a core trauma event within it, with several lines of dark energy moving in the body to be triggered in various ways inside that person. Used like marionette lines of a puppet to be activated from certain emotional or mental triggers. When those deep trauma wounds are in the person and there are cords connected to them, many times they connect to mind control programs that are specific 3D belief systems. What can happen is that the trauma wound attracts an extra dimensional entity or negative discarnate that is vibrating at a particular level at whatever the trauma wound is. So say there is a traumatic psycho-spiritual event where someone was a victim of child abuse, or at some point in their lifetime the person underwent some experience of abuse. So, if that abuse energy is not forgiven, cleared and moved through the body, that person probably splintered off and disassociated from that trauma timeline, and according or astral binding was now created that connects into that timeline of the event. I can't tell you how many times I have seen someone as a child that has gone through an abuse and their emotional and spiritual development is stunted. The aging process stops at that time of trauma. Even as their biological body ages, their emotional and spiritual body just gets stopped or frozen in time. That person who suffered that trauma may actually have the emotional development of an 8-year-old, a 12-year-old in that particular issue because they never healed their inner child from the abuse they suffered from that particular timeline. So it's important to understand how these timelines work, as when you call back these aspects of inner child or self, you're calling back fragments of yourself that have been soul splintered through those particular timelines, especially when deep wounds like this are left unresolved and unhealed. Tears and vulnerability in our energy field that attracts entities. Generally, they can be discarnates. They can be beings that have unresolved issues on the astral plane that will actually start to attach to that person because it's familiar energy vibrating trauma for them. There are millions of reasons that entities attach to others. Sometimes they are from agreement, but most of all these imbalances are created from unhealed trauma wounds. We create from the law of resonance, so when our body is resonating at a particular vibration of trauma wound, then it will attract energies that are resonating at the same frequency rate. That also will include entities, and when entities start getting involved in attaching to the human energy field, then that person will experience feelings of great dense heaviness, depression, oppression, things that take away the natural joy that we have as spiritual beings infused with heart and soul. There is a huge connection between these deep trauma wounds that remain unhealed, and over time the wounds are exaggerated and magnified in their painful effects by 1,000 through the entities that the person is now carrying. The more emotional charge that is around the trauma is the number one issue that leads to addiction problems. So if there are deep wounds, not only emotionally, but also around the instinctual mind that has to do with addiction, this wounding is very difficult on the emotional and etheric body of that human being. I just wish we could get this information out to millions of beings that have addiction problems, because if we started clearing the entities alone from the people that have addiction problems, they probably would be relieved by about 60 to 70% of their intense cravings for addictive substances. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people deeply entrenched in problems of wounds or addiction or abuse, and a huge percentage of their perceived pain isn't even coming from them. As an individual, it's actually being filtered in from the airwaves, not only from the etheric energies that they're attracting, but the entities that are manipulating it. Because if you're not fully in your power as a being, you don't understand this realm in which dark parasitic entities exist. Soul fragmentation. The more soul fragmented and damaged a person's energetic body is operating, or not operating at all, the more distorted the thoughts and behaviours become. These deviations are manifested as addictions, perversions, and a wide array of damaging personality disorders that can be well observed in the individual as destructive to the self and destructive to others. When one is continually destructive towards the self or others, eventually the soul matrix layers fragment and split. When a human being is soul split, they will exhibit mental confusion and tendencies that are called schizophrenia, dissociative personality, sociopathy, otherwise known as lack of empathy, and an array of psychological distortions that potentially lead to insanity. In order to heal from past trauma, we will have to face the memory or event that had traumatized us at the point in time of the actual event, or has been recorded as tremendous pain within the body. We will have to face the memory or event that had traumatized us at the point in time of the actual event, or has been recorded as tremendous pain within the body, brain and soul. In order to spiritually heal the body and mind from trauma-based events or mind control, pushing through triggers is important in the spiritual integration and personality integration process. Here are some steps. Remember what happened that generated the trauma or pain. Give expression, give voice to what has happened. Having a witness that is capable to hold a safe and non-judgmental space is important, if at all possible. Allow yourself to feel the feelings, and allow the process of feeling the repressed or unresolved emotions of what had happened at that time of the trauma or unresolved pain. Memories must be given the time and space to be emotionally processed into completion. Intentionally sever the attachment, cords, and bonds to that painful emotion, or the people or circumstances involved. If needed, evict any negative entities or demonics that were siphoning energy from this cord. Intend to reclaim all aspects of yourself that have been fragmented from pain or trauma. This is the RRO, or return to rightful owner. Close the harmful portal to the past time where the trauma has occurred, or close down any multidimensional harmful portals that has left damage in the aura. Traumatic memory example. A woman who was sexually assaulted in a cedar room may develop an aversion to the smell of cedar without making the connection. Whenever she smells cedar, the survival brain will shift her into fight-flight, the yellow zone of danger, as a precaution measure. She may start to feel anxiety without knowing why, which changes how she moves through the rest of her day. Until this trauma is cleared from a subconscious or survival brain hard drive, these triggers interfere with her ability to respond to the now moment. Trauma is not in the event, it is in the nervous system. The traumatic memory will keep showing up in the present until it is cleared.